welcome to Life Chats with Maggie and Bunny. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Bunny.
Looks like I have a red letter sticking out of my head. I just noticed that as I'm sitting here. It's really the word love, but it's sticking out of my head like a big L. How are you today, Bunny?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good too.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about reframing and restructuring some areas of life, whether it be words, actions, choices, whatever comes up in this conversation with
Yeah.
the title of reframing and restructuring. So for me, I know personally that, as I said, I can only talk about me because I'm the one I know. Sometimes, especially now in life, it's about reframing things. In this journey of life, there's some words that I have been programmed to believe are wrong or hard or difficult or unfriendly or, different things. So I find if I can reframe what I say to myself, sometimes it changes the way I feel about it,
Mm-hmm.
like, and we've probably all heard it in different areas of the media where people will say, instead of saying, I have to go to work,
Mm-hmm.
say, I get to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I have to exercise, I have a body that I can move.
Yeah.
You know, I have to go for a walk somewhere because my car is broken. I get to walk because I
Mm-hmm.
can. So, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today with the reframing and restructuring, because so many things in life, if we can reframe them, they're easier and it changes.
Yeah, I think that's probably why it's easier, right? Because if you change the energy behind the word,
Yeah.
and I don't just mean like energy, but like, the emotion, the everything behind that and the thought process behind the word, then yeah, it would be. And if you pick something a little bit softer, like you were saying, if you change those, like I have to, or I think like that you're obligated, that you're, and that kind of thing. Even just changing the word, like if you say I have to, it means that some other force is making you.
Yeah.
And even so, but you've chosen to do that, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was. So you kind of, it's that whole victim mentality,
Yeah.
where everything's happening to me instead of for me, or, that kind of thing. So I think that's where, when I think about the reframing and restructuring the words in our life, that's really where it is for me, is about taking your power back and being, instead of looking at yourself as a victim of life, looking at yourself
Mm-hmm.
as somebody who chooses, and this is where it goes.
And it's all about, like you said, taking your power back and
Mm-hmm.
standing in your power.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing a saying one time, if I change the way I look at things, the
Mm-hmm.
things I look at change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true because it does take the victim mentality out of it. You know,
Right.
we're not a victim to anything
Yeah.
unless we choose to be,
Right.
even for example, and you and I've talked about it before on our podcast, you know, we're not a victim of anger unless we choose to be. We
Mm-hmm.
can let things just go.
Mm-hmm.
We can just, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you can choose to not be angry about that. You
Mm-hmm.
can choose to just think, well, maybe they were just having a bad day.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't see me.
Right.
Maybe they're preoccupied. Maybe somebody just died in their family and they're not thinking straight.
Right.
There's a million different reasons why somebody could cut us off in traffic other than just they're trying to mess with my life,
Yeah.
because really they're not trying to mess with their life. They barely notice us.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Even when you were thinking about that, was like the fact of reframing and restructuring, that it's personal. Like even that is for, so not just the words that we use, but also the fact that a situation, an experience, that it's personal, where we take it personally, like exactly what you said, like some stranger who cuts you off, they probably didn't even see you. How many times have you done that? Like not you personally, but like the general
I have
you.
personally. You're
Yeah.
you're you're not wrong. I have
Well, no,
personally
but
done that. And then I go, oh,
and then okay, so if you have done it personally, if you have accidentally, because somebody, and that's only if that's only if somebody reacts, like if they honk at you, or if you see them and notice them and you're like, oh my goodness, like and you literally did not see that person, it was completely by accident, like you didn't even notice for whatever reason, whatever it was, whether it was there, you forgot to check your blind spot, or you were
Yeah.
preoccupied trying to get somewhere else, whatever the case may be. I mean, I know myself, I was following Waze on the 401, which I don't like to drive on the 401. And it was like, move, you got to move. And I had like maybe 10 meters to move 3 lanes across, right? And I honestly can't even tell you if there was anybody around me. Like to this day, I couldn't tell you if I did cut anybody off because I wasn't paying that much attention to that in that
Yeah.
moment. What I was paying attention to was I was worried about my anxiety about being on a road that I was not familiar with, that I was afraid to be on, and then making sure that I got onto the right way so I wouldn't be lost. That's all
Yeah.
I was thinking about. So, in that case, someone else could be the same way.
And isn't that true of not just road, but any circumstance?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those emotions come in when we're in a circumstance that we're not comfortable with,
Right.
when we're in a space of life that we're not comfortable with,
Mm-hmm.
when we're on a particular bumpy road that we're not comfortable with,
Mm-hmm.
when we're walking in the dark somewhere. It's those types of reframing and restructuring happen many times in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Some we're okay with, some we're not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time it depends what else is going on in our life.
Right.
Like if you were in a city that you knew and on a road that you knew,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't have the same type of anxiety
For
to it.
sure. Yeah.
But, the same thing happens if I'm driving in places that I don't know, Montreal being one of them.
I've
If I
never
have to
been.
drive, if I have to drive in Montreal, I just hate it because it's the same type of thing. I have the anxiety already. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really matter what happens there
Mm-hmm.
because I've already told myself before I even get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
you have anxiety driving there.
Right.
So I already have anxiety.
Right.
It didn't, being there didn't give it to me. The same as driving in Toronto. Driving in Toronto gives me anxiety.
Right.
No, driving in Toronto doesn't give me anxiety. The thought of
Right.
driving in Toronto gives me anxiety.
Right.
I could drive in Toronto where there's no traffic,
Well, yeah, I could probably drive in
but
Toronto if there's no traffic too.
and that's where, looking deeper then, no, it's not Toronto's fault to have anxiety when I drive there. It's mine
Yeah.
because I recognize that I have anxiety when I drive there. I have it before I even get there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's got nothing to do with the event. It's got to do with history.
And
And that's
that's
where
yeah, I was gonna say
that,
that's the funny thing is because it's the story we tell ourselves, or as somebody that I know, that I've heard of lately is like the REEL as opposed to the REAL. So like the stories that we tell ourselves, like that it's going to be busy, that there's going to be a lot of traffic, that there's going to, like, all of those things is we're already telling ourselves those before we're even there. So our body is reacting because our mind is telling us that we're in this. And because our mind doesn't know the difference between a story and the reality of what's happening to us,
yeah,
we already reacting, our body's already reacting. Like even if I just started to say to you, oh, you have to drive to Toronto, automatically your body starts, you start to feel your stomach clench out, everything starts, and it's
yeah,
like, but you're not there, but your body's already reacting as if you are there, which I always like to flip it and go, and this is precisely why we can use this in healing, we can use this in changing the REEL, like in changing the stories and changing the past and
yeah,
changing our reactions if we want to, obviously. But we can use that because you can just play it in your mind, but play it like we just tend to play the negative, the worst case scenario. So if instead we played the best case scenario, what would it
yeah,
look like instead if we did this?
yeah.
Instead.
And that's where reframing and restructuring comes in because
Mm-hmm.
I believe that there probably is a time that I could drive in Toronto and be completely calm.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't experienced that yet, but well, unless I go on the 407. But
Yeah.
it's and that's where restructuring that real that I tell myself, because it might not always be difficult. If
Mm-hmm.
I did it more often, I might be more comfortable with it. If I was reframing it and saying, I'm going to be okay. And maybe I'm not at the place in my life where I can do that with driving in Toronto or Montreal,
Yet.
but
Yeah.
maybe I can choose, yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe I can choose smaller things in my life to reframe them.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, that's what I want to get across to our listeners. What are those things in your life that you tell yourself? What are the stories that you tell yourself that you could reframe,
Yeah.
that you could possibly be at a time in your life? And it has to be at a time in your life. There's something in my life that I'm working on right now just because it's time.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't time a year ago, wasn't time 5 years ago.
Right.
It's time now. So life is like that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we say that on Life Chatz. Life is
Yes.
like that. Life changes,
Yes.
and you don't have to do everything at one time. You
Right.
don't have to uncover every rock on your path on the first journey through.
Mm-hmm.
We can take our time and we can reframe as we feel able, when we feel ready,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes reframing takes work.
Yeah. And also the like the fact that you're afraid, well, I'll say you get anxiety driving in Toronto doesn't mean that you have to drive in Toronto completely without any anxiety. Like tomorrow, just choose, hey, I'm going to drive without any anxiety. Doesn't mean it's going to happen like that and that you're a failure if you do have
Right.
anxiety. Like, or if you go and you drove 30 seconds without anxiety, but then you had anxiety for 10
If I drove
minutes.
one exit.
Like, exactly. So,
And in reality, I'm not a failure even if I chose to never
right.
drive in Toronto.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the restrictions that we sometimes put on ourselves of,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a failure if,
Right.
or a success is. And what if you're just not a failure?
Mm-hmm.
What if you can look at it and say, it really doesn't matter if I ever drive in Toronto, as long as I
Mm-hmm.
have someone to take me there if I need to go there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have to be measured that way. If at some point I want to feel more comfortable with that, then yeah, I could practice going a couple of exits or
Mm-hmm. Well,
stuff like that.
I had a thought of, and it's a similar thing on what what we think of as failures is actually it's funny because actually it comes from conditioning and beliefs and programming, that kind of thing. But what's really funny is I was thinking about the Olympics, and if we took say a track runner, like a sprinter, so somebody who's really good at running the 100-meter dash, they beat world records, they beat all the things, and then you threw them in a swimming pool and they sucked. They came last every meet. That you wouldn't say, oh well, they're a failure as an Olympian because they could only run really fast. They can't swim really fast. They can't jump really far. They can't, like, you wouldn't do that. So it is okay to, you're not a failure. You can celebrate the things that you do really well without using like the things that you don't do very well and kind of, holding yourself to that standard instead. So that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of what for this is like the same thing. If you want to reframe your life, you may reframe only certain parts of it, and other parts
Yeah.
you're like, I'm going to improve that, or I'm going to, whatever the case may be. So, yeah.
Yeah. And this life is a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a journey that we have to race through and get everything correct and do all of that. It's not. It's a journey of exploration. It's a journey of trying new things. It's a journey of seeing what we are today and what we are tomorrow and what we are a, a year from now,
Mm-hmm.
because I can pretty much guarantee that the person I am today, although I think I'm pretty good,
Yeah.
but the person I am today isn't the person I'm going to be a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I can evolve and change, and circumstances can change, and things come in, things fall away.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. There's,
Yeah.
I don't have to stay the same,
Yeah. For sure. And we don't
you know?
actually stay the same. I know that, people think, but even if you look, like, I know that, you know, getting older, and so it's finding new little wrinkles, on my face or something. Like, so that's me noticing that I'm changing, like, even without conscious, like, I'm not saying put that new
Yeah.
smile wrinkle on. Usually that's where it's from, is smile wrinkles. And I'm not saying, hey, do this. I'm not consciously aware of it, but it is still happening. So I think even that's the thing too. If we take steps and reframe something that is what we would think small. So if you think that your life is, you need to make a whole bunch of changes, you're at a point in your life where it just isn't measuring up for you anymore, and you want to make changes, but you don't want to you don't know how to make a change to affect a whole. Making a small change and a reframe of a small thing, it's gonna make a big difference. I actually
Hmm.
saw this video, and it said something about, if for 30 years you were a farmer, and if for 30 years you took your cart to the market in the exact same path every single day for 30 years, back and forth, you would create really deep ruts. All you would have to do to change that rut is to change it by like 1 degree how you hold those tires, and little by little you would actually make a new path. And
Hmm.
so, like, 1 degree of a 360-degree circle is very, very tiny, right?
Yeah.
But in the long run, it makes a huge change. And I actually believe too that anytime I've made even what was perceived as a small change, it actually opened opportunities for other things
Yeah.
to come into my life, or opportunities for me to make other changes, which then it's like, oh wow, okay. And it's like you wouldn't even recognize where you were because
Yeah.
of those small changes. So yeah.
And that's the thing. It does, those small changes do change the whole pie. It does
Hmm.
change the whole outlook of it. But we're programmed to believe that only if we make radical changes
Hmm.
does it matter. And I'm here to say, no,
Right.
small changes, you know, if I lost one hair every day, eventually I'm not going to have the hair.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So we think, okay, if the hair falls out today, it doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
Well, no, if a hair falls out every day, it matters if there's no
Hmm.
new growth coming in. So
Right.
it's that type of thing. It's not, we don't have to do big things, but sometimes in our programming of our brain, I'm told, and I tell myself, I can only use myself.
Hmm.
I tell myself, well, unless you can fix that completely, don't even try.
Right.
Where no, that one little change can change the path
Yes.
and
Yeah.
does completely open the door. So, to our listeners today, if you're on a journey and on part of a road that you don't like, one little change can
Hmm.
alter your course. One little course correction,
Hmm.
course adjustment
Hmm. even
will
just
alter the whole
even
thing.
just changing the way you look at something, like, that's enough of a change. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be anything physical that you do, it could be just a thought that you do.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. that's
And,
that's big.
to just know that you matter exactly the way you are,
Hmm.
exactly how you are, you matter,
Hmm.
and it's okay. So that's kind of what we're going to leave you today on with reframing and restructuring.
Yeah. Yep.
Your turn, buddy. You tell them where to find us.
Yeah. As always, you can find us on our Facebook page at Above and Beyond. We also are on Spotify and everywhere else where you get podcasts, as well as YouTube. If you can, I mean, watch give us some views on YouTube, give us some likes, share with us. You can also email us at aboveandbeyond@gmail.com, or just go to our website at aboveandbeyond.com. That's where you'll find all of our fun things that we're doing, as well as our collaborative books. So check us out there, and are coming soon as well. That's it for
And
me.
we still invite you to be a guest.
Well, that's
So
true too.
if you would like to be a guest on our podcast, there is a link on our website that
There
people
is.
can ask to be a guest. And so far, we've refused nobody.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, that's it for
Okay.
today.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.